Well, management now at the stage of my career is very much on the agenda. Obviously, we've got some nice guests here tonight. Terry Neill, probably one of the most influential managers Arsenal have ever had. You got the sack, Terry?
Yeah. I was actually, on a serious note, John Lyle, who was the other long-term manager in the London scene in those days, we used to meet up every week, really, various games.
You're not blaming it on him, are you?
No. And we kept saying to each other, we're not really proper managers yet, are we? Because we haven't had the sack. And within about 6 months, we both got our wish. So John Lyle and Terry Neill, even though we're not directly day-to-day management now, are proper managers. And I'm extremely proud about that. But I'm also extremely proud about, and I must give Arsenal Football Club immense kudos for. It was all handled impeccably. And I feel very sorry for those managers who, since my sacking, which was always the prerogative of Arsenal Football Club, and I'd always said to all of the chairmen, the two chairmen that I worked for there, they didn't have to give me a reason. It was their club. I was their manager, even if they just said, we want to change. That was entirely their decision. I had no ego problems with that at all. And I'm delighted to say the Arsenal handled the whole thing impeccably. And we remain friends to this day. And that's the way it should be. Sadly, I think that is not the way it is today.
It's not. Have you ever been involved with a manager getting a sack, Stein?
No, I tried to ring Pleaty a couple of weeks ago, but his phone was engaged, so...
Have you got a couple of sack or not?
Probably. No, I don't think so. We went down in '91 at Luton, from the Premier to the first.
And there must be loads of tittle-tattle, he's got to go, this is going to happen, that's going to happen.
Well, there's a few at the moment. You know, well, there was that game with Pleaty 2 weeks ago at Sheffield Wednesday. And as I said, I tried to ring him, but obviously his phone was red hot, and I couldn't get in contact with him.
That was the 0898 numbers.
Oh, was it? Don't tell my missus.
Terry, what happened? What happens when you see people? You see these managers. We've just seen Jerry Francis, for instance, in the press conference. Thanks, lads. You see the back of him. What happens to a manager when he does walk out that door? Well, feelings and emotion and...
that takes a bit of time to go. If you take
Does the cheque get you over it? The cheque that follows you out the door?
Well, it helps a bit. Oh, it helps a bit. Hey, listen, I'm a pro, and I always have been since I was a little boy, and I'm still a pro now. Although the fee for this programme, thanks to yourself, is, whatever. I'll give you a donation a bit later.
That's why you never put yourself up for the village.
The first thing I did was went out for a bit of lunch down the West End. A very good friend of mine who's now the chairman.
When you went in, Terry, did you know it was coming?
Oh, yes. Oh, you've only got to be in the game for about 2 minutes. You know the signs. All the press guys knew. One of the things I'm immensely proud about, the Saturday before I got the sack, I got the sack on a Friday, 16th of December, well, let's leave that date, it's a while ago.
28.
And 38. And, you know it's coming. So I cleared out my office the night before because I knew through the managing director that the chairman wanted to see me at 9 o'clock the next morning. I took the view that, well, if I've got this completely wrong, and we'd been beaten by Walsall at home in the League Cup, so that ain't good. West Brom, of all people, had beaten us 1-0 at home, so I knew, things are getting a bit tight. But a week before, we'd been at West Ham, league game, we're beaten. Because I had such a good relationship with all of the press, we were in that tunnel there, which then was the press room at West Ham, and we're all hedging around what the real question of the day is, when do you think you're going to get the bullet? And all of a sudden I whipped out raffle tickets for a kids' charity out of my pocket. 300 quid I stung them for. You would love that. I knew you'd love that story. And said, there you are, boys. There are some things that are far more important than a game of football or whatever. Took 300 quid off them, stuffed it in my pocket and said, thanks very much indeed. I moved quicker than I ever moved when I was a player. And they were all going, but. And I know what they wanted to ask me. When do you think you're going to get the sack? Well, they didn't have long to wait the following Friday, but I'd never let it spoil my lifestyle. Don Howe took over from me, and When I'd said farewell to the staff on that Friday morning, Don said, well, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to have lunch with a man called Ivor Arbiter, now the chairman of Hendon, where I'm privileged to be a director. He said, right. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with the press today. Don't want to get involved in that. You know what Don's like. He's not happy with that side of things. He said, I'll join you. So to this day, I've got this vision of Don Howe slipping out the back door of Highbury, and he has confessed to me since that when he was on his way down to the tube, because you know what a cheapskate he is, he wouldn't get a cab or anything. He probably had his travel card to get into the job in the morning. He had to nip into one or two gardens when he saw the press coming up. But Don came down, and to his eternal credit, he said, right, you haven't got a job now, son. You haven't got your payoff or anything like that. I'm buying lunch. What would you like to drink? I said, well, we'll start with 2 or 3 bottles of Dom Perignon.
Got to bring in another life member of Luton.
Got it.
Sid the elevator man. and if you watch our show in the new year, we'll tell you why he's the elevator man. We've also got Brian Stein, another Luton. Well, he played like a supporter, actually. Some people might say. And of course, got Terry Neill on the question of managers. Sid, just like to bring you in. We're talking with Terry there about managers going, coming.
Yeah.
You know, you've been at Luton a long time, and Steenie's been there in the glory days. You've been there, obviously.
Yep.
You know, where do you see as a supporter what happens to a club? You know, I mean, it was flying high with Pleaty and that.
Sure. Well, I suppose times like this, it's sort of easy to slag off the chairman, the manager, the players.
No, feel free. It's that sort of show.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm about to start slagging off the chairman.
Remember your membership.
No, I think make a couple of points really. I suppose really a club, particularly in this competitive environment of football today, does need investment in the players. And it's all right as far as we're concerned, looking forward to a possible new site for our ground. But first and foremost, we're a football club, and we've got to get our team sorted out. So I think, having said that, we've got a situation where, understandably, the boys needed to pick themselves up from a disappointing season last year, having got knocked out of the playoffs. And we anticipated this year that it might be tough for us to start, but at the moment we're in a situation where probably I think I can say we're the weakest Luton side that I've seen since I've been supporting the club.
See, that's the problem. You must be thinking to yourself, go and find a Steenie, go and find a Mick Hartford, go and find a Steve Foster.
To name at least 3 or 4.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are a lot of good players that have come out of
right.
John Hartson.
Yep.
You know, why did they let John Hartson go?
Well, again,
I mean, it was a lot of money. It was good business at the time for Luton. But then if you know
who have we got now to replace?
As you're saying, they're on about moving their ground, one thing another, but it's got to come down to game day, isn't it? It's got to come down to saying, well, let's get it right on the pitch, and then let's go and get a lovely stadium.
That's right. And I think, apart from anything else, we've always been known, quite rightly so, as a footballing side. I mean, we've got a couple of Watford supporters in here at the moment. You normally tell them they're looking up at the ceiling all the while. And
I was there.
I know you were.
Schoolboy. I was a schoolboy.
I know you were. But I think we're in a situation. I think we're in a situation now.
And you haven't lost it.
I ain't lost it over 20 years.
I think we're in a situation now where the division that we're playing in calls for a modification of our football.
You need the plastic turf back. That's the only way you're going to get out of it, isn't it?
As long as that doesn't bring back Mr. Evans as well, possibly, yeah. He had some good ideas, but no, we don't want the plastic back. We want a team that's got some substance to it and is playing as a team.
Would you have him back?
Well, I always like David. I mean, he's known as Mr. Luton, and I think that probably will always. I always.
Only on that red light dish.
I always thought. I thought we were talking about football, not hobbies.
Well, balls are balls, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I've always admired him, and I've always thought he's at his best when actually building up a team of developing players as opposed to necessarily buying players in. And funnily enough, we were just talking about managers leaving and being let go and so on and so forth, and no names, no pactorial, but we hear that a certain manager recently dispensed with by a Premier side was told over the phone that he'd be going. I mean,
Come on, then. Come on.
Well, it's not for me to.
Give a couple of clues.
It's not
Couple of clues.
Not for me to mention names, really, is it?
A clue. Give us a clue and we'll work it out. Speaking of working out.
Well, I mean, if I said sort of gave a hint like pleated skirts or something like that, and you have to get a cryptic message and try to work it out for yourselves
Sheffield,
without mentioning any names. Cutlery, your style.
It's got to be, isn't it?
That wasn't so much a clue as a surefire answer, eh? Why didn't you just say that?
But
He just wants to come back to Luton.
no, to say it would be wrong for me, for any Luton supporter to sit here and say bring back David. In other words, Lenny, you haven't.
But it sounds
played.
like you want him to come back.
Well, I think you get to a stage really. We've just lost our four home games on the trot, and we've been knocked out of the cup for the first time in the first round of 67 years by third division side. I suppose sometimes the manager might have to take stock of the situation, as Jerry Francis recently did, and said, well, OK, fine, perhaps time for a change in approach. We've just changed the team coach. Wayne Turner has now taken over as team coach, but is that tinkering with the situation? I think we've got to modify our football because of the division that we're in.
But Sid, what do you want? Do you want them to change to get up the league? As you're saying, would you be happy with them going up the league playing like Watford, or staying down there playing like Luton are at the moment?
Well, I don't think we would ever play like Watford any more than Watford would play like us. But I think in the division that we're in, it calls for a modification of fast passing balls when possibly the players, in terms of youth and so on and so forth, are not up to that. And every now and again, chasing a long ball is no bad thing, and that
But
comes
you're
from a
going to keep
Luton
your membership,
supporter.
Sid?
Absolutely, yes.
We'll be back.
Absolutely.